Hello, I'm Alex Mitchell. I am a stand-up comedian, podcaster. I do bits of acting. I'm in showbiz, darling. That's what I do. I've been in stand-up for a little while now, for 4 years almost. Stand-up is what I love doing. It's my favourite thing. I am queer, I am autistic, and I am disabled, which gives me quite a unique voice in mainstream stand-up. But there's a lot more of us than you think. And that's really exciting. I have a neurological condition called FND. It stands for Functional Neurological Disorder. It basically means the chemical makeup of my brain is imbalanced. Something there isn't right, but we don't know what it is. There is no cure, there is no treatment, because it is to do with the functionality of the brain, not the structure. The best way to kind of think of it is that the software is malfunctioned. Something's gone wrong in my brain, but we're never going to know what it is because we can't see it. And the only way to properly look at it is you need to have a deep dive inside a live brain, which we can't do. People have tried to link it in the past to mental health problems. People have tried to link it to past trauma. People try to link it to physical head trauma. We don't know why it happens. One of the theories that I kind of like to believe in a bit more is that it's you're born with it, but it takes an event to trigger it, for it to start. For me, my symptoms began in 2021, where I began to have functional tics. They come across a bit like Tourette's, so I make involuntary movements, involuntary sounds. I also have a stammer, and I also have a posterior tremor, so shakes. I live with constant headaches, often becoming migraines. And I also struggle with my balance. I now walk with a walking aid. That's been a pretty recent thing for me, only the sort of last 9 months, and that's a strange adjustment. Every day is a new day with FND, and every day I have to learn something new about my body and my brain. That's a challenge. It can be very difficult. I try and use it as an opportunity to learn more about my body and actually connect more with my body and my brain. You know, a positive experience really from it is being able to connect with my body more and learn what makes me work, both physically and mentally. It can be very challenging. I live in, a lot of pain. I have to take a lot of medications. It makes my job sometimes particularly difficult, but this is who I am. It's taken me a long time to accept that, but I am now at a stage in my life where I'm like, this is what it is. This is my life now. This is where I'm going. I'm different to who I was at 21 when symptoms first started, but I've got to learn to live with this and still be able to enjoy my life, because otherwise, what's the point? It's a very strange condition in that we don't know why it happens. We don't know how it happens. And you can't actually test for it. The testing for FND is incredibly traumatic because doctors have to test for everything else first. So they're telling you, okay, we need to look and see if it's a brain tumour. We need to look at if it's motor neuron disease. We need to look and see if it's multiple sclerosis. And that's terrifying. And that process takes such a long time. It can take months and years for some people. You basically think you've got some of the most awful and hideous conditions that could kill you, and actually what you've got is something that we just can't test for, so you have to rule out everything else first, and that's very stressful and challenging for not just the patient, not just the people, but the families of those people, the friends, the loved ones, the jobs you do. It dominates your entire life for such a long period of time, where it can be incredibly traumatic and incredibly scary. When I started in stand-up, I had to address my FND. I had to address my tics, I had to address my stammer. It felt like I just had to do that. There was a pressure on it because people would be looking at you like, what's going on here? Is this some awful character act? Like, people didn't know. And that was always my fear, but that was a lot of internalized pressure rather than it being externalized coming from audiences or promoters. It came a lot of time from me being like, I need to address this. I'm now at a stage in stand-up where I've been doing stand-up a little while. I'm on the UK scene, I tour, I go all around the country. I'm going to Europe this year, and it's like, actually, I'm at a stage now where I'm trying to reference it a lot less, because it's not the most interesting thing about me. It's not the most interesting thing I've got to say. I've got many more opinions, views on the world that aren't just dominated by disability. And also, like, we're living in a space right now where there is a lot of disabled comedians coming through into the mainstream, which is incredibly exciting and hadn't really been happening before. I actually find that really exciting. I actually love going on stage and talking about what I want to talk about. I think the best comics are not just funny, but they also have something to say. And for me, that's what I wanted to hear. Well, I know what I want to say, I know what I want to do, and it's not all to do with my disability. I am autistic. I grew up with autism. I quickly developed a real ability to mask my autistic symptoms and my autistic tendencies and traits. And that's something I heavily relied on being a kid. And then when I was 21, it developed FND, which is obviously a lot harder to mask. You can see it, or you can see a lot of it, right? You can't see everything, but you can see the tics, you can see the tremors sometimes, you can see I'm using a walking stick, right? At first, that's always quite scary. You're going into a world, a society, a place where everyone can see that you are incredibly different. Everyone can see that you're disabled, and there's still a fear of using the word disabled, right? There still is a fear of using that, and the moment you can reclaim that becomes a very life-affirming moment, when you can reclaim the fact that, yes, I'm disabled, and that's fine, and that's okay. Yeah, screw it. It doesn't matter. The moment you can reclaim that is a really powerful moment, but it takes a long time to get there. And for me, part of that was about, I can't mask this. I'm in a fortunate position where my job means that I'm on stage, so people see it on stage. So people are seeing it more often than not. I don't have the option to stay in and not do my job. So I can't mask this. And because I go on stage and you can see it, you have to very quickly develop both that thick skin, but also, you haven't got a choice. People are going to see it anyway. And actually very quickly you realise that not a lot of people are that bothered. And that is really affirming, and it takes a long time to get there. But for me, it was exposure therapy, putting myself out there, making people see it. My FND causes me to have blackouts, almost like seizures. And one of the big things for me with that is, again, it's something you can't mask. Like, if it happens, it happens. And I was so scared the first time it's going to happen in public, because the first few were in my house and just only I saw it. So I was very worried about them happening in public, to the point where I got to the point where I was like, well, I'm so stressed about this that I just need it to happen. Because once it happens, it'll be fine. Like, it'll be, I'll see how people react to it and go, oh, this is fine. This is okay. There's not actually a problem with this. Like, people aren't that bothered. It's going to freak people out, and they're going to be, they might be a little bit scared for a second, but actually no one's viewing me that differently. So for me, it's always just been about getting out there and pushing myself to do it. That's hard. It's taken a long time, taken a lot of support, a lot of mental health support. But as soon as I'm out there and doing it, it's all right. It's not that bad. I don't drive and I have to do a lot of traveling for this job. I'm on trains a lot of the time. I'm ticking on trains, and people are sort of like, at first, like, oh, what's going on here? And then they're fine. But it takes a long time to get there. It's all well and good saying it's actually okay, and that exposure therapy is really great, but it is scary. It's a scary thing to do. But once I was out there and just doing it and getting on with it, it meant that I could just get on with it. My FND developed after I started in comedy. I wasn't going to let it stop me doing stand-up. Stand-up's what I love most in the world. I couldn't let it stop the one thing that I was doing, and really the thing that is cliche, but it's something that really sort of saved my life. I wasn't going to stop doing that because suddenly I was making some weird noises. Before I was a stand-up full-time, I worked in primary schools. I was a primary school teacher, and my FND developed while I was a primary school teacher. And that was terrifying because it was this idea that I thought I was going to lose my job, because if I couldn't talk, how was I going to teach? But, one of the biggest fears, again, was how I would be sort of seen and viewed. But my fear was always much more about how my colleagues would view me rather than the kids I taught. We can learn so much from the way children view the world. I'm a firm advocate for that. I believe in that so much. Actually, having that innocence, that playfulness, and that silliness is something that we should also value as adults, right? That's what it makes us happy and makes us excited. And so with children, when they were seeing my disability for the first time, seeing my tics, it was an initial interest, which is not a bad thing. Like, from adults, I'd rather you were interested than pretend I wasn't there. Because that's often what happens, right? Is that I'm in a busy train station, I'm in a supermarket doing my weekly shop, people see me ticking, people see me with a walking stick, and they're just like, oh, make sure you don't look at him, walk around him and stuff, just pretend it isn't there, pretend the disability isn't there. We don't need to do that. I know it's here. It's not that I'm going to be surprised if someone turns around and goes, oh, you're ticking, and I'm like, oh God, am I? It would be funny though, but I'd much rather it's noticed and people go, oh, that's fine, and notice it and take an interest. That's cool. That's fine by me. I'd much rather that than pretend it's not there, pretend I don't exist. That's what's great about kids. They'd ask me a question about it. I'd give the simplest and quickest answer I could, and then we just move on. And because kids are more interested in other stuff. Like I say, it's not the most interesting thing about me. Kids are much more interested in, okay, why are you making those noises? Well, I'm making those noises. I can't control it. It just happens sometimes. All right, what's your favourite colour? That's what they're more interested in. That's what makes you a person. Kids are more interested in what makes you a person, what makes you an adult, what makes you a functioning human. And I think there's so much we can learn from that as adults. Like, let's not be uncomfortable around it. And that is very difficult because it comes from years and years and years of society telling us to view it differently, to view disabled people differently, whether that be in a positive way or a negative way. We've seen it both ways. I mean, I was 12 years old when the Olympics and Paralympics came to London, and that changed so much perception of disability, but it was positive in a negative way, in that now it was like, oh, all disabled people are amazing and inspiring, and we should just treat them like normal people, and just we don't need to, stare at people with disabilities. We don't need to talk to people about disabilities because they're just normal people. All that positivity led into some actually quite negative traits as well, in that a lot of the time our disabilities are just ignored. That's not what we need. I need my disability to be noticed. I want my disability to be noticed and then left alone. But I need it to be noticed first in order for me to have the same access and the same treatment as everybody else in the world, as all able-bodied people. I need it to be noticed first and then left alone. And that's what kids do, and that's what kids do so well and so brilliantly. We as adults need to look at that and go, we should be doing that as well. That's really important. I'm seeing a lot now. All disabled people in media are being labelled as inspiring. And I don't like that because it's set our bar low at what inspiring is. I mean, I've been described as inspiring. I enjoy making myself laugh and making other people laugh, and sometimes you have to do that by not being a great guy. I don't want to be labelled as inspiring. I've not done anything incredible. Everything I have done has been for my own career and for my own wealth. But on a serious note, there is still a societal perception that all disabled people, whether in media or anything in general, we can only be one of two things. We can either be, oh, aren't they so inspiring, or just miserable. And that's how we're seen by the world, is we're only allowed to be those two things, right? We either have to be these inspiring, happy-go-lucky, the disability's rubbish, but hey-ho, life's great and I'm trying to be as positive as I can, or we're seen as being completely miserable. Why can't we be somewhere in the middle? Why can't we fluctuate between the two? Why do I have to be one or the other? Because that's exhausting. That is completely and utterly exhausting, to have to be so positive all the time or so negative all the time. But that feels like a lot of the time all I'm allowed to be. And I don't want that. I don't want that. I want to be somewhere in between the two. I want to be able to have a spectrum of emotion like everyone else. It's so frustrating that I don't get to have that. And that, for me, is something that I want to advocate for and want to be proud of, is that actually I am allowed to feel so many different things, and that's okay. That's what I want, really. Society has produced a vacuum over recent years about how we need to be the perfect and best version of ourselves. And that's impossible. And that is such a pressure. And that comes from social media. It comes from people we're seeing in mainstream media, where, everything's about how can we make our lives as best as possible? How can we live our best lives? How can we, just be that best version of ourselves all the time? That's not possible. That's not an achievable goal. And people also talk about normality. The number of times now I see quotes like, being normal is boring, or, what even is normal? It's so cheesy and so cliche. Like, don't say that to me. And that just makes me go, I want to end this conversation immediately and wonder why we were ever friends. Normality is just getting up in the morning and going through your life. Like, for me, I wake up in the morning, unload my dishwasher, I put the bins out, I bring the bins back in. I live that normal life. I go and, I start work. Now, my work's a bit weird and a bit different to quote unquote normal jobs, but I'll do a bit of writing. I'll record an episode of my podcast. I'll do an acting audition. I'll do a self-tape for an acting audition. I'll do an interview like this. I'll write an article that I need to write. I'll then go out and perform in the evening, and then I'll come back, and that's my life. I work, I eat, I sleep, all while making some weird noises and shaking a little bit. That's what everyone does. But we don't need to say to disabled people, well, what is normal? Like, don't say that to me. Let's just accept that, actually, everyone lives a life and can do what they want with it. As long as they're not doing something awfully immoral and unethical. Otherwise, it's fine. We all live these lives, and that's okay. And we don't need to be labelling that as normal or not normal or anything else. Just let people live their lives, man. Just let them live it. That's all we need to do. In terms of what I'd love from the circuit is just, again, I'd love my disability to be seen, to be noticed, to be adapted for, and then left alone. Let's talk about something else. Again, I don't want to be seen as inspiring or this wonderfully always happy individual. That's not what I want. I want to be seen as any of the other comics in a green room. It's not all rock and roll. We're just normal people. We're just normal, boring people who chat about the weather and the traffic on the way to the gig and how bad the trains were and the football results that day. That's what I want from a comedy circuit, is I want to be able to have the adaptations made so I can actually perform. And then I just want my disability to be left alone. I'm often asked, what's next for me? What's the next thing I want to go and do? And people often associate that with, okay, what are you going to do for the disabled community? What are you going to do for the autistic community? What are you going to do with your charity work and your advocacy work? I'm still obviously going to do that. I think it's really important we talk about it. If you've got a platform, use it for good. I very much see myself as an autistic Batman. That's awful. But if you've got that platform, use it. And I think that's really important to do. But also, I think what's empowering for myself more than anyone else, but also perhaps other people who see it, is I'm just going to continue to work hard at what I love. I'm going to continue to work hard at stand-up. I'm writing my next hour-long show that I want to take to all the festivals and hopefully tour, and I want to go around the world with it. The dream is I get to go to the festivals in Australia and New Zealand, and I just want to further my career, but also have a lot of fun while doing it. And I think that's something that people will hopefully see as empowering, because it's empowering for myself. And just people can go, oh, he's doing well for himself. And if he can do it, Christ, anyone else can do it. Because if this guy can do it, so everyone else must be able to, because that's just how I view it. I love doing it. It's very selfish. I do it because I love it. I don't do it for any other reason. I do it because I love it and it pays my bills. And that's brilliant. That's the dream scenario for everyone, is to do something they love that pays their bills. And so that's what's next for me, is I'm just going to keep working as hard as I can at the thing I love most in the world. And if people see that and go and view that as inspiring, or view that as, oh, isn't he doing well for himself? Or if he's doing it, well, I can definitely give it a go, then that's an added positive. But that's never the reason I do it. And that's another thing with disabled people when we talk about being inspirational. Don't assume that everything we do is for the benefit of other people. I do my job so I can have a job I love and I can make a bit of money. I'm a stand-up comedian. I don't want other people to get into the industry. That just takes away from my work. That means I'm getting less bookings and suddenly my bills are going up and my money's going down. If anything, the message of this is don't go into stand-up, please. I need this. But don't assume that everything I do is to inspire other people. If it does do that, great. But that's not the reason I do it.